David could feel the rush of blood through his body, feel the thud of his racing heart. He kept his voice low so that it would not tremble. "Thank you, Leader Marley, for your kindness in noticing my appearance. I suppose I chose my parents well. They both lived to be over 90, you know. This is no joking matter. I've just had a report. An epidemic of blue Martian fever has broken out among the people of your institute. Why have you not mentioned it? If you will forgive me, Leader Marley, I've had no chance. I've reported it in the usual manner to the health authorities, and have here in my briefcase a memorandum which I hoped to bring to your attention among several other matters when you finished giving your instructions to me." Marley continued implacably. "And how did this epidemic begin? It was my understanding that no insect existed here on Earth that could transmit the virus, yet several people from your lab came down with the disease on the same day. What is your explanation?" "It is very simple. To prepare the vaccine, as I'm sure you will remember from your last visit to us, we have to keep in the lab a limited number of the Fafi, the Martian insects, which act as a host at one stage of the virus's life. Last week, a menial carelessly knocked over one of the cages, and several Fafi escaped. The menial was discharged, of course, and put into punishment, but the damage had already been done. You have a very ready explanation. Would you rather I have none at all, Leader Marley?" "Well, let that go." Marley drummed his plump fingers on the desk as he continued. "There was another report for me just now. A report so wild, so incredible, so staggering, that I scarcely bring myself to take it seriously. From an office category at the Institute." David's heart beat wildly, but he forced a smile to his lips. "Oh yes, you must mean Miss Hatch-Novick. I've been worried about that poor girl for some time." "What do you mean, poor girl?" "It's very distressing to me, because she has been a good and loyal worker for many years, but she is becoming unstable. She has a tendency to burst into tears over nothing, is sometimes hysterical, seems to have secret grievances, and is extremely jealous of other women whom she considers more attractive. She was never too bright, to be sure, but until recently she has done her work well. So I've hated to take any action. Just this morning, I had to send her home because she was ill." "Do you mean to say," asked Leader Marley, "that none of her story is true?" "I don't know. What is her story?" "She reports that you have been working on a private project of your own, instead of on White Martian. That you have discovered a way to make people immortal by infecting them with blue Martian. What is your explanation?" David only stared, his mind so blurred with panic that he could not speak. His stunned silence was broken by a laugh. It was Dr. Lanza, leaning backwards in his chair, holding himself over the stomach as he shook his head. "These hysterical women." His laughter trailed off to a commiserating chuckle. "You're too forbearing, Wong. You shouldn't have kept a worker who's gone so far. Take a leaf from Leader Marley's book, and remember kindness is often weakness. When it is necessary for the good of the state, be harsh." "I hardly know what to say," said David. "I had no idea she'd gone so far." "Then there is no truth to it?" Marley persisted. "What she said is impossible?" "Well," said David judiciously, "we people in research have learned not to call anything impossible, but this dream of immortality is as old as the human race. We have thousands of legends about it, including the story of the phoenix, that fabulous bird, which when consumed by fire, rose triumphant from its own ashes to begin life anew. A pretty story, of course, but I need only put it to a mind as logical as yours, Leader Marley. Throughout all of the millennia of man's existence, the sun has always risen each morning in the east, and thus we know that it always will, that it is the order of nature. Likewise, from the earliest generations of man, no individual has ever lived longer than 100 and some years, and thus we know he never will. That is the order of nature, and we can't alter it to the best of my knowledge." Leader Marley was thoughtful. He touched the intercom. "Send in Officer Magnan." David held his breath. "Magnan, Officer Category Hechnovic is to be taken from her home at once and put in indefinite psycho-detention." Marley stood up. "Very well, Dr. Wong, you may go, but I shall suspend your privilege of privacy, at least until you have devised a protection against White Martian. It is not wise to disregard the wishes of the leader. Lanza, show him out." At the street door they paused. Lanza looked at David speculatively. "You do keep your youth well, David." "Some people do. I remember that legend of the Phoenix. What do you suppose the Phoenix did with his new life, once he had risen from the ashes of his old self? I am no philosopher. Neither am I, but you and I both know that the principle of induction was exploded centuries ago. It's true that the sun has always risen in the east, but is there anything to keep it, someday, from rising in the west?" That night, David sat at his desk. Through the open door behind him, he could hear the watchguard slowly pacing the dimly lit corridor. He could feel time pressing at his back. He was reprieved, he knew, but for how long? He got up at one point, when the corridor behind him was quiet, and went to the bookcase. He pressed the brass handle, saw the shelves silently swinging away from the wall, and set it back again. The mechanism, installed a century ago by a cautious politician, was still in good order. Back at his desk, he thought of Leah, and her lost youth, lost because of his own impersonal attitude. He felt sorry for her, but there was nothing he could do for her now. It was a relief to know that Tanya, at least, remained hidden and secure in her sister's apartment. It was after midnight before he closed his notebook and locked it away in the top drawer. His plans were complete. There would not be time given to him, he knew, to finish his work on White Martian. That would have to be dropped and resumed at some more favorable time in the future, if there was a future for him. But he would begin at once to produce in quantity a supply of the SDE Blue Martian, for he was sure that the untrained guards who watched his movements would never realize that he had shifted to another project. With a brief goodnight to the guard, he left the building to walk home. His shoulders were straight, his stride confident, and he disdained from looking behind him to see if anyone was following. He had made his terms with himself, and only death, which he would certainly try to prevent, could alter his plans. Going into his apartment, he wearily turned on the light. Then he froze, feeling as though he had been clubbed. Leah Hechnovic was hunched at one end of the sofa, her face dripping with tears. "I thought you'd never come," she whispered. He slumped down beside her. "How did you get in here, Lee? I thought you were. I hid in your hallway until the watchguard was at the other end. When his back was turned, I just took off my shoes and slipped in. I've been waiting for hours." Her voice was almost inaudible, spent beyond emotion. "They got Tanya," she said dully. "They took her away." "What happened? Quick." "After I reported to Bureau Med. I'm sorry I did that, Dr. Wong, but I just couldn't help myself. I didn't tell them about Tanya and the others, just about you. Then I walked around for hours, hating you, hating Tanya, hating everybody. Finally, I got so tired that I went home. Just as I got into the hall, I heard a loud knock, and I saw Officer Magnum at my door. When Tanya opened it, he simply said, "Office Category Hachnovic?" When she nodded her head, he said, "You're under detention." She screamed and she fought, but he took her away. Since then, I've been hiding. I'm afraid. David tried to think. He remembered that he had said only Miss Hachnovic in his talk with the leader. Had Marley never known that there was more than one? But Lanza surely knew. Or had he merely assumed that Magnum would only ask for Lee? Would they realize, at psycho-detention, that they had the wrong woman? Probably not, for she would be hysterical with terror, and her very youth and beauty, taken in connection with the jealousy and envy of younger women, which was noted in her commitment order, would seem to confirm her madness. He was still safe for a while, if he could keep Lee away from the Institute. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "Don't let them put me away." "Then you'll have to do exactly as I tell you. Can you follow orders exactly?" "Yes, yes." "I'll have to hide you here. We can fix up my library as a room for you. It's the only room I can keep locked, in which my menial never enters in my absence. Whatever happens, Lee, no matter what happens, keep yourself hidden. More than your life depends on that."